is her bubbly personality and sense of humor. So somebody who's basically coming out from a attorney's perspective and having to still have that coming out smiling, that together with her expertise and professionalism, I think she's an amazing person to have on our platform. So Elize, thank you very much. Also, those of you who are here from an international perspective, we also have Naushina on board on standby. So Naushina, if you'd like to say hello as well to everybody, that would be great just before we get started, so that you will find there are sometimes questions that mostly between Elize will answer, and maybe Naushina can add to that as we move along. So Elize, all over to you, and in the meantime I will also ask Naushina to share her camera just in case there are anything that is reflective that she can answer. Elize, all yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and good morning. It's absolutely wonderful to be part of this whole, you know, I want to say process and movement to give people education and support during this process. One of the things that I've sort of learned during, hello Naushina.
Hi Elize, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. I'm so glad to have you on board. It will be great to be here.
I've met you. It's an absolute pleasure meeting with you.
Now I just have to share my slides. How about you? I can't hear you.
Handing over to presentation to you now. Give me a second. You can just quickly introduce yourself while I'm doing that.
So, as Hawa said, I'm a qualified attorney. I've been practicing as an attorney for about 18 years. And during last year, I resigned from the law firm and actually proceeded to focus only on Xpello, the eviction management company. So I'm having this absolute pleasure of, you know, being part of a law firm, that background, working with a lot of attorneys, but also focusing on investors and how to grow that. I think all those years of expertise, I had the absolute privilege to do a judges course, you know, to be able to sit with appeal judges and judges, to do training and, you know, how do they adjudicate things. And it sort of made me realize, you know, many times I understand from business people, you know, they get frustrated with attorneys because, you know, attorneys are, you know, strict by the law. And, you know, sometimes they don't understand what they are saying. And to be able to be the in-between person is an absolute fantastic situation. So that is where I, with the big smile, where I always love to say that I, you know, be part of it, and managing the Xpello is my more core focus, and then also to work with various property companies and investors. I think that always helps to, I want to say, to make sure that I keep on what is going on around me. I just want to quickly see, I just want to make sure, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I'm feeling lost. I lost your faces. So
Elize, no problem. So let me, if I can just guide you. So what happens is when you actually click away from your PowerPoint slide, then you're opening up, or so rather when you click on the program for go to training, you move away from your PowerPoint slide. So what I recommend is you stay on your PowerPoint slide. We can still see you very clearly, and you then run your presentation.
Okay, fantastic. I love that. It's one of the things that you have to get used to is, you know, especially when you were used to so many interaction to speak to a screen only, and you do it so fantastically. So my focus for today is really going to be, as we said, property, tenants, investment challenges. And one of the things that I know that without going into too much nitty-gritty, that some of the principles are worldwide. How you approach it, you know, the processes may differ from country to country, but I think the approach should definitely, in a sense, be the same, and always to have that caution. So we are going to have a look at, you know, defaulting tenants. You know, there's different types of defaulting tenants. One of the things that I always say is that people are immediately on the side of a defaulting tenant. People immediately feel sorry for the tenant that's defaulting. And, the landlords, I laugh, I say, if you think of any movie that you watch, the landlord is either a greasy guy with the chain around his neck, or he's going to be a old lady with a cigarette in the mouth, demanding rental. So that is one of the things how landlords look like. And if landlords don't take the right process and do not follow the correct process during these times, they can really prejudice themselves. But then also to have a balance, to make sure that parties communicate with each other and come to some sort of agreement. Because, tenants they are having a difficult times, but landlords as well. So they are also feeling the I want to say the pressure, especially from the financial side. And then what we are going to look at as well is, immovable properties. It's still a good investment. I looked at a couple of graphs yesterday and stats, and when I talk to a lot of people that are from the education platforms, educating people how to be property investors, it's some sort of security. And a wise person once said is, don't go and panic now. This will too fast. And just to see why is immovable property still a good investment. But also there's a couple of guidance. And then how to really go and protect what you have. I think sometimes, you know, how the years evolve, especially in South Africa, to do rentals in the past was much easier than now. Most people, they said they will pay, and they made payments, and they were very good tenants and all of that sense. But things has changed, and people do take chances and they take the opportunity. We have one of the stats here in South Africa. They found that the things that people pay very religiously are their telephone accounts if they have a vehicle, and then DSTV, multi-choice, the TV programs, because they need to speak to people and they want to watch TV. And unfortunately, your rent is not really always on top. So, that grooming has been a real problem. So just to see, if you want to invest in a property, still use it as a business, because many people forget that if you lease out a property and you have it, that's a business, and you have to protect that business. So that is the things that I am really going to touch on. What is going to be very important is, please ask the questions, that we have that interaction. We can always give a guidance if it's too much details, because one thing I do know is every matter is a bit unique. So you don't have a legal advice for one fits all. And if it needs to be, I've got my co-presenter here to help and answer those questions as well. So one of the things that's really been giving everybody nightmares are defaulting tenants. The moment, the lockdown happened in different phases in different countries. And the moment that happened, it got a bit of a delay. Now in South Africa, the lockdown started in March. And, immediately the 1st of April, there's a lot of tenants that didn't make payments. And I'm quite sure in other countries as well. And then the end of April came, and that again, now there's even more people that didn't make their rental payments. And I thought, there's a big thing that is important, is to determine your defaulting tenants that defaulted prior to the lockdown. Those ones you are going to treat a bit differently to the ones that defaulted after or during the lockdown. And the reason why I say that is if you had people that had defaulted before, they're not going to suddenly, most probably their situation has become more severe. They're not going to be able to start making payments. Or if there's already a dispute and putting pressure, it's not going to resolve it. And the nice thing about those ones is you can proceed with the process. And I would actually suggest that you speak to your local attorney or your contacts to assist you with those ones. The tenants that defaulted as from the lockdown, the approach of them will always be a bit differently, because to mediate and to get information is very important. I say, you take it from the stance. You can't assume that all tenants immediately are I want to say bona fide, they can't pay. Maybe, I'm quite sure we had in the beginning had panic buy. It's almost like Christmas shopping in that sense that everybody goes and overspend. So I think that might have been a part of the reason that people couldn't pay their full rental. But to have the discussion to find out why they haven't paid the payments, and to get proof. That is one of the things, and when we're going to go through the process as to what to put in and what to ask when, because remember, as a landlord and a business owner, to document everything and to talk clearly doesn't only help your matter, doesn't help the whole situation, but also helps your legal team at the end of the day. Because I say, to that very famous thing is, I'm going to sue you, or or legal consequences will follow. That sounds very intimidating and fantastic, but at the end of the day, what do you say? Be clear, be concise, that everybody is on the same page. I think that is a very, very important thing. And then, of course, cancellation and demanding people to vacate. So in South Africa at this stage, and I think in many countries, people aren't allowed to just purely go and move now, because movement are still restricted. So in the past, it was very, I don't want to say a handy tool, but that was showing the severeness of something, to demand that somebody to say, I'm going to cancel, I'm going to demand that you vacate. Now, if you make a threat like that, and everybody knows that you can't really follow up on that, the whole threat is sort of, it doesn't have any bearing. So it doesn't help to say, we ask you to vacate if we all know you can't vacate. So the other thing is, and what has happened, if people have vacated illegally, I mean, this has happened, I saw that now over the weekend. Is that really going to be beneficial? Because now your property is going to stand empty. And that opens the door for so many other things, because you can't place a new tenant into the property. People can go vandalize, they can go, if you see again, somebody goes and squats in your property. So to really determine what is the best solution and what for your property in your situation, I think that is one of the things that has to be assessed. And the other thing that comes about a lot is, people say, but it's a right and you have to. And the tenants, on the other hand, have to remember the owners are not legally obliged to give you a payment holiday or a deferment or any of those effects. The reason for that is, yes, the owner may apply to the banks to say, listen, can I please get a deferment or a payment holiday on my bond? But it doesn't mean they're automatically going to get it. They have to apply for it, and if they don't get it, they're still liable and they have to make payments. Same with tenants. If you haven't made payments before, don't expect to be accommodated and have those type of, say, you don't have to make payments. Or if the owner is really in a situation that they can't afford to do anything because they're not getting any relief, the tenant can't really say it's my legal right and I don't have to pay rental. That's one of the things that people really have to consider, that is important. The tenants have to still keep their obligations, and your credit ratings, and one of those things that's to really have an impact to see whether you're a good tenant. Everybody's credit records are going in some way going to be affected. Now the big thing is, how do you behave during this time? I think almost that is so much more valuable than anything else. So your tenant defaults, and you should wonder, where do you start? Now, I call the first one a letter of demand. It might be called differently, but in essence is to start that first step to say that your rental was due on the beginning of the month, and this is the amount that you were supposed to pay, and you did not make payment. And what is always important to about that is to be clear about, if you wanted 5,300 rand, make sure that that 5,300 rand is in your letter of demand. Don't just go and say you were supposed to pay in terms of the lease agreement and you have not paid. Don't, make sure that everybody is quite clear. The reason why that is you never want to give the people an opportunity to say, but I wasn't sure how much I was supposed to pay. I also want to take this opportunity and say to the landlords, and I'm going to repeat this again a bit later, that when you lease out a property, always make sure that you keep proper records. You know that at any time, if somebody asks for a statement, a rental statement, that means to show every month the rental that was due and how much was paid and how much is outstanding and exactly what was levied. I mean, you have your rental, you can have additional fees for water, electricity, whatever other else has been agreed between the parties. You have to have that breakdown. And one of the things that was quite concerning to me is to see how many people are so excited and and they jump into property investments and they get a property and they lease it out. And when I ask for a rental statement, they're not sure what that is. So as you are at any stage should be able to confirm what the amount dues to you and on what do you base it. Remember, it doesn't matter where you go. If you have a presiding officer, they must be able to read it easily. I usually make the joke when I was still studying, I had a very old advocate and he said to me, remember the judge or the presiding officer in the front, he reads a lot of stuff. He doesn't want to do difficult calculations. So always make your stuff as easy to read and understandable as possible. So the same approach with your statements. Make it as easy as possible that nobody can interpret it the wrong way. So that's the first thing. You're going to say, this is the amount that you were supposed to pay and you haven't paid it. The next step would be is the expectation is I want you to make payment within a certain period. Now, the periods can change from different countries. It can be governed by your contract that you have with each other. So make sure that it's clear between both parties, because you don't want to say that I want you to pay within 3 days and then you don't do anything, because you have to follow up as well. You can't say, many times people said, oh, well, I gave them 7 days, but your letter said 3 days. You have to be on the same page. That is very, very important to make clear. I want you to make payment with a certain period. And maybe in this period to say that I expect you to make payment within 20 days, for example, in South Africa, if you have a Consumer Protection Act lease. But please contact me before the 20 days is up in the event you want to make an arrangement. Because then it's quite clear that, listen, I am demanding this, I am starting the process, but I'm still open to discuss. So if there is something that we come to an agreement to say, for example, I cannot make payment this month, or I can only make a partial payment, that is discussed. Because also what I have seen is many tenants think that if they can't pay the full amount, it's better not to pay anything at all. So if you invite them and say, contact me and we see what we can negotiate on the way forward, you do leave the door open. And that is important. And then the end, of course, the consequence. Um, that's the part that's also important to stipulate. To say what may happen if they do not contact you or if they don't make payments. It's going to be very important. You're going to say that I have to go to my attorney to start the legal process, for example, or you will be handed over to professionals. Now, the consequence of referring it to an attorney means that there's going to be legal fees included, and they're going to be liable for that, and that should be conveyed. So, on the one hand, you're informing them. On the other hand, it's also assisting to say that, listen, let's try and resolve it without incurring costs. Because instead of you paying my attorney, I would prefer you paying me. That's the one thing. The other thing is, over and above suing them, without suing them, Hava, I just want to check. I see my camera went on and off.
Yeah, we're just trying to fix your cameras at the moment. No issues. You can continue, Elize. It just that it seems to be stuck a little bit, so we're just trying to fix it. So no issues.
Okay. Can everybody still hear me nicely?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, so the good news is,
can I just suggest while we've just taken can I just ask you to to remove your camera and then to start it again, if both of you can do that for me. Just a quick second. And Naushina, yours as well, if you can stop the camera and then start it again.
Okay.
Thank you. And then you can start, Elize.
okay.
Perfect. Naushina, you're back. Thanks.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay. And everybody can still see my screen.
Yes, perfect. Thanks, Elize.
Fantastic. I'm not seeing the questions, but Hawa or Nasima, I'll ask if there's a good question,
Cool.
if you guys can just interrupt and, read the question, or, we'll
All right,
make
perfect. So
for that.
if you're done with this slide, then I can just read out 2 comments, and if both of you can then comment on that, if possible. So the first comment comes from Mark, and Mark says, one can cancel a lease, but it will then become month to month as nobody can move away.
Mark, from my side, that's actually not totally correct, because the moment you cancel a lease agreement, there's no lease agreement in place. And one of the bases why you need a lease agreement is because you want your rental to be paid. If there's no lease agreement, you can't demand rental. At most, you can claim for damages to say, listen, the lease agreement has been cancelled, but you're still staying on my property, therefore I am entitled to damages. Now, from South African side, and I'll hand over just now, is it's much more difficult to prove damages than rental, because rental is already an amount agreed to in an agreement. Nasima,
Okay.
from your side?
Good.
Naushina, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Elize. From a perspective of proving damages, you are indeed correct. It's absolutely more difficult in proving damages for a claim in respect of any damages that may have been sustained on a property, or loss of rental income in the form of mitigating those losses becomes much more difficult than having to claim outstanding rentals or arrear rentals, as it may stand.
Yeah.
So just to answer Mark's question, yes, I'm also of the view that we at this stage, a landlord would not be, or it would not be advisable for a landlord to terminate a lease agreement, or it becoming a month to month, simply because you then stand without the effect of having to be able to claim any monthly rentals in terms of your lease agreement, be it verbal or in writing.
And Naushina, just to clarify, that will be also from a completely international perspective, UAE or any other perspective as well?
So from an international perspective as well, at this point in time, evictions and movement from property to property is at this point suspended. However, the UAE has come out with a provision over the last 2 weeks, that allows for tenants to move from one property to another if the property managing agent or the body corporate of that building makes provision and provides consent to do so, and that all of the sanitizing and the disinfectant provisions are kept in place.
Okay, fantastic. So ladies and gents, I think that's very important to be able to look at it from each country's perspective. So Elize is very much coming from the African perspective, and Naushina is giving it to you from the international perspective, especially in the UAE as well. And if you're still not clear on that, please liaise with them even after the session or on the chat. And I know that Mark said that that was a comment, but I'm glad that the two of you could actually clarify that if for some reason, Mark needs to contact you further. One last thing before we actually move on back to your presentation is Shanta has a comment as well. And Shanta, I'm not sure if you would like to unmute yourself if it is a question, but I'll read it out in the meantime. I'm using the term tenant farming for this question. Firstly, the scenario. Yesterday, a building house, 37 individuals, was destroyed by fire. Clearly, this was not legal letting. My concern is who is liable for the safety of those individuals, and how does one go about dealing with these tenant farmers? Any advice on this? I looked at pictures, and the first thing that caught my eye was the number of electrical extensions.
Shanta, I think the first question would be in which country? Because I think
South Africa.
I've had a lot of situations in South Africa where we've had tenants or alternatively unlawful occupiers who embarked on a rent boycott. They elected not to pay their rentals or the utilities consumed on the premises. The city council was obliged to disconnect services on the premises, which resulted in those tenants or unlawful occupiers having conducted unlawful electrical extensions, and that could have very well caused a fire. I'm of the view personally that it is the responsibility of the landlord to guarantee the safety of the tenants. However, in a situation of that nature, it's very difficult, and that is why in that specific situation, my clients elected to evict all of those tenants as quickly as we could, and we are.
Fantastic. Thanks, Naushina.
Naushina, can I just add?
There for a second. Elize, if you just want to just a last comment on that before I take another question from Shanta.
I think the last is it's clearly if the property was destroyed now by the fire. I think the question was, you know, who's going to be dealing with the tenants? I mean, if there's no way for them to stay there, then hopefully they're going to move, because you don't have a responsibility to go and try and house them now. They have to vacate. But whether they are, if the moment they are illegal, how they came about there, you deal with them in terms of, they call it very nicely, the Fire Act in South Africa. So definitely the owner is not going to be expected to try and help them and house them now if they're illegal and the property burned down.
Yeah, I agree with you. If the property has been destroyed, then the landlord has no obligation to take care of those tenants going forward. They need to make their own arrangements.
Okay, can I ask a question now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Naushina, I gather you're in the Emirates, right? And the area that I'm looking at parallel to South Africa is the Musafa Shabia area. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that in Abu Dhabi.
Yes,
right?
Yes,
the Shabia, and it's the similarity I'm drawing is like, you know, when you really go into Shabia 11 and 12, and you look at the properties there, the villas that do not have the Baladia approval, right? So it's a similar kind of setup that happened here yesterday. Now, I know how the UAE handles it. I've lived there for 6 years, and I've had to. Let's not just, you know, delve into that.
Shanta, we seem to have lost you there for a second. Your sound is gone. Armal, if you can quickly check on that for me, please.
Have you got me now, Hawa? Have you got me, Elize?
Yes, I can show you.
Okay, good.
Armal, we seem to have lost some sound, or is it just on my side?
Hawa, I think it's only on your side.
Okay. So Elize, my issue is with all that government is allowing now and, you know, the housing, etc. From a human rights perspective, because I'm involved in a few NGOs, we had to get these people, you know, get them clothes and things like that. Political parties got involved, etc. So where does government stand in a time of a crisis when something like this happens? Do these people get preferential treatment for housing in common housing areas? What happens in a case like this?
The sad part about this is I think the government don't have enough place for a lot of people. I mean, the government is responsible to give alternative housing, but there's such a big demand. At most, what they usually do with these people is they arrange a temporary residence for them, which sometimes aren't ideal. I mean, whether it's a church hall or a, you know, on the sports fields or something to that effect. But the housing to permanently move them, I mean, there's such a long list, and there's so many people that's so poor. So they're going to really investigate to see who's earning an income, who's not earning an income, whether they are South African, whether they're not. So there's such a big criteria to see. I think the biggest thing with those people is to really have the conversation, and, you know, if they can move to family, at least, because to move to family is maybe going to be better, I think, in a practical sense of view, than instead of, you know, maybe landing up in a hall with, especially now that you don't know, you know, what's the possibility of maybe even getting sick, and whether it's got all of the facilities. But that's
and action against what action can be taken against the landlord for this illegal letting?
Well, the thing is, one will firstly prove whether it's the landlord specifically that's doing illegal letting, or whether it's one of the tenants that's subletting. Because one of the things that often happens is, you know, you have one tenant that takes a property and they start subletting. With very different situations. I was involved in a very big squatter camp that we wanted to evict from a piece of land, and what we found there is that one of the tenants, well, that stayed in that property, was actually took hold of the tap and was selling the people water. And I mean, those people alone can't even afford it. So I think that is a situation that really should sit down, discuss with your attorney, that you guys can really look at all of the aspects.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So if I can go, is there any other questions, or let me quickly go on with the process, and then we can just have a, when I'm done with this slide, we can have a look at a couple of other questions as well. So when we started with the demand process and the letters, what was quite important is at the end is, of course, to say what is the consequences. And as Mark said, is if you say we're going to require you to vacate, you know, and they can vacate, it's fantastic. Then you're going to really enforce it. What we at this stage really want to say is, in the past it was very easy. You send off your letter, nothing happens, and you cancel, and you proceed with the legal process. But now things has changed, and I think we all have to start, you know, being more proactive. So to really go and follow up on your letter, to say 5 days ago, you know, whether it's by phone call, WhatsApp, you know, to say, listen, I've sent you this letter. Firstly, to start the process, because I'm obliged to start the process. But can we resolve it? Because mediation and is very, very important, because at the end of the day, the courts are really going to have a look at how the process was tackled, if I can say it in that sense. So to follow up with the tenants, many of them usually say, when we do the phone calls, they go and say, oh, no, I didn't see the letter, or, oh, I didn't receive it. And then you can take it, say, okay, fantastic, here's the letter, I'll send it to you again, but you haven't paid, you are aware of this. What relationship, or what can we come together? If they need to get some supporting documents, or, you know, maybe proof from the employer to say that they aren't earning an income, let them get that income back to you. But don't just leave it, you know, follow up again. I sort of want to come to the third one. It says, you know, confirm, say that, listen, you have given me these documents. I'm aware that you really cannot pay, but you'll continue endeavor to pay me something, whether it's 100 Rand or 200 Rand, or at least pay the utilities. Because one of the things that people have to remember is that the tenant is not paying anything. There's no obligation on the landlord to go and pay the utilities if they don't have the money. So if the government comes and they disconnect the water, electricity, you know, the tenant can't demand from the landlord to go and pay it. So there's a couple of things that people have to take into consideration. What is also very important is, if your tenant goes in absolute ostrich mode. Now, ostrich, they usually have to say they put their head in the sand, and then they don't see or know anything around them. Many tenants do that. They sort of assume that if they don't respond, or they pretend not to get the letters, that none of this will have an impact on them. Make sure that you have proof that the letters have been sent. WhatsApp is absolutely fantastic. You can have proof that it's been sent and delivered and read, all of those stuff. Keep as much proof, and then confirm. Say, I have phoned you so many times. This is the proof I have. I've WhatsApped you. You haven't responded to me. You're not cooperating. If you don't cooperate with me, I have to go legal. You're not leaving me any other choice. What this helps it immediately puts the landlord in a much better position, because it clearly shows that the land is really trying to solve this. And for a moment, you sort of putting back the imbalance. You know, the landlord is not this evil person just demanding money, but he's a person that's trying to solve it, and the tenant is taking advantage of that. So that is so very important. And I usually say, my father actually said, you know, sometimes you don't have to ask the questions, you have to tell them. Don't ask, listen, please come back to me, otherwise I have to tell them, you have not come back to me. so I have to do this. So they don't need to confirm anything for whatever you said to come into place, that everybody is on the same page. Then if it has to come to that stage, now we've now heard internationally, there's some countries that say if you cancel, the people may be allowed to vacate if there's certain things and they have consent. In South Africa, nobody's allowed to move at this stage, but what has changed is eviction processes can be started. So,
Yeah.
they can have a consequence to not adhering to the process.
In fact, if I could just come in there, Elize, in fact, even if a landlord obtains an eviction order, the proviso in the draft order to the judge would just have to state that the eviction would take place after the suspension of alert level 4. And once we move on to alert level 3, perhaps, then the landlord would be able to execute on the eviction order that was granted.
Yeah, so many people will say now, what is the use of starting with the eviction process if they don't, if they can't execute it at this stage? But I
Yes.
mean, there's going to be a very big benefit, and I'll touch on that just now as well.
Yes.
Is there, so before I move on to the
Thanks, ladies. I'm back. So sorry, I lost you for a moment. Mr. Zafar, thank you very much. Anmol has just sent me your message. So he would like to know, would participants or the facilitators be interested in legal and practical experience in subcontinental market? So I know, Naushina, your experience is from the subcontinental market as well. So
I've just Mr. Zafar Asmani
yes.
to request that he must connect with me after the session.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, good. So that is then sorted. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Zafar, thank you very much for that. This is one of the reasons that we do have Naushina on board as well, just in case we need anything from an international perspective. Elize, I think if we can continue then with the presentation, that would be great.
Okay. So what we sort of wanted to say at the last end is, if you need to cancel and I usually say is when you threaten something or you say you're going to do something, very important to say that. And what is going to be very important is to determine whether the cancellation and demanding to vacate is in your best interest, especially if you know that they're not going to make any payments. So the first thing is, if you start with the eviction process, there's of course going to be some legal cost involved. So that's the first thing that landlords have to keep in mind. Now, many people say, yes, but the agreement is the tenant has to pay. And I'm quite sure many attorneys will tell you that is correct. I'll claim it back, but you have to start paying me first. Yes. The next thing is the moment if you start with your legal process is that there's going to be, you can't ask for rental income. So during the legal process, that's the time you're definitely not going to send out any rental statements. And usually the feeling from the tenant side is, well, I started the process in any event, I'm not going to make payments. So that sort of closes the door for that type of negotiations during the process. And of course, I think a lot of courts are going to be absolutely flooded. There's a lot of actions. Courts has been also going, I don't want to say go slow a bit, but they haven't heard all of the new matters. They're not taking any new matters. So of course, there's going to be an influx of time. So an eviction process is going to take much longer, I think, than what usually happens. And of course, if you can't get new occupants in, is it as wise to then proceed to evict? So the slide is not there to make people scared of an eviction. That's definitely not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to make sure that are you ready to proceed? If, for example, the people are not allowed to move. Either the body corporates aren't giving consent, or even worse, they don't have anywhere to move to because nobody wants to accept them at this stage, which can play a very big role. People not wanting to accept them because they have defaulted. What is the best way? Is it not better then to see if you can settle and mitigate it during the process until such time you are ready to proceed with an eviction? Sort of make sure that you have everything in place. And then when you decide to go for it, to really go full steam for it. So that's with regards to evictions, which I think is very, very important to take note of. So before I go to the next slide, as to, you know, dealing with your property and just touching on the defaulting tenants, if there's any other questions, please let it pop up and we can address it before I move on. Otherwise we can always come back to it. You know, what I love about this whole property thing, everything is intertwined and you can anytime connect with anything.
Fantastic. So ladies and gentlemen, just a quick 30 seconds. If anybody has a question, here's your chance to raise it now.
Hi.
Good. So at the moment, we do have one hand that is showing up. If I can check it. Yes, Ida?
I just want to follow up with regards to the contract agreements with the tenants, right? So we have a month-to-month with one of our existing tenants. Is that valid? Because okay, they've been there for more than a year and 6 months. Or do we need to re-sign a new legal agreement with them on a month-to-month?
So in South Africa, you don't need to sign a new lease agreement, because in terms of our law, it stipulates that your lease agreement will automatically go on a month-to-month term on the same terms and conditions as your original lease agreement. So if you're happy with the original lease agreement, then you don't have to enter into a new lease agreement.
The other question also is the other policies or other legal agreements with existing tenants. With the COVID-19, right? Is there any amendments from a legal perspective where we need to go in now and amend the legal agreements going forward, or does it still stay the same?
Remember, a lease agreement or any agreement can be changed by the parties if they both agree to change it. But there's no necessary at this stage to go and change it. At most, you know, if you know, your tenants maybe from South African side, a tenant can at any time at most give 20 business days to say we want to end an agreement. But at this stage, I think there's no need to change it. If there's any material changes, then definitely note that between the parties that you have that in writing. But from my side, I don't think there's anything specifically that they have to go and amend.
Okay,
Naushina, from your side?
So we just
Elize, from my side, I'm of the view that
Naushina, from an international perspective.
Yes, from a South African perspective, firstly, I'm of the view that a lot of the landlords and or tenants have been placing reliance on the so-called force majeure clause, wherein the clause would basically outline if there are any pandemics, epidemics, or acts of God, acts of nature, then the parties' obligations would necessarily fall away. I am aware that there are a lot of legal principles and provisions revolving around that specific principle, but I'm also of the view that that specific principle must be dealt with accordingly in all lease agreements. And I think from an international perspective, it should stand as is. The force majeure is more of a South African one. In the international world, the lease agreements are quite standard.
Okay, perfect. I think that does answer my questions. So I'm just thinking now, you know, from a tenant's perspective, maybe after the year of the lease agreement, we should just go in and maybe do minor amendments, and that should be based on a South African law.
Yes, yes.
To cover us as well. So I think that would actually be better to do that.
Yes, you could either do an addendum to the agreement, which would deal with your amendments or versions of the agreement, or we could do a new lease agreement. Either way.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much.
It's a pleasure. You're also welcome to contact me.
Yes, I definitely will.
To help you and guide. And
what we'll do is at the end of the session, we will definitely post both the details for those from an international perspective in Dubai. You can contact Naushina, and then also from a South African perspective, Elize is there as well.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I take it there aren't any more questions, no more hands, so you're more than welcome to continue, Elize.
Okay. So I've just decided to Let me just go back. Just to make sure, can everybody see my screen? There we go. So overall, I think property as an investment is a very good investment. You know, compared to shares, gold price, any other investments, there's not always a big up and down. I mean, you can invest in new technology companies, a lot of that, and you can make a very quick uh, millions, or you know, or the company can crash tomorrow. Where property has throughout shown up and down, very low. And when I saw this graph here, it was quite amazing. And one of my very good friends and colleagues in the property industry said, you know, times has changed, and property values did go down, you know, to below market value, but it always pick up. You know, there's always been a crisis, and it always go up again. So it's not like you're going to lose the value of your property in total. You always have a structure, and you always will need it. You know, the type of income that you can generate from it is not just the rental income that you get, but the actual property, you know, when to sell it and buy it can play a big role. So property always keeps a value and its value. It's never been that this property is valued at nothing. And that is something to be taken into consideration. And also one of the things is property can be obtained without using your own capital. So yes, you can get finance a bond, but you'd never, you know, that, and it also determine on what balance. You know, they usually say your primary property is not an investment because you stay in it. So you know you're going to pay it off and you stay in it. But if you buy another property and you lease it out, and your bond, for example, is less than the value of the property, at least you always have somewhere to go get some capital if you want to go buy another property, or you can pay it off just to have that flexibility while you get the income from your rental income. So property is always a good investment. I think different countries has different opportunities. We deal with a lot of investors that you know, they're looking to invest in the UK, Dubai. I see lots of South African people actually wanting to invest there, and overseas people are wanting to invest in South Africa. And now people say, yeah, but now we've been rated to junk status. What is the impact of this? And I think, you know, if one looks at is if you have a property, and a lot of people don't believe me if I say, you know, that's why we do evictions, is because we want more housing available. And how you bring those two together is many people don't want to invest into property because their biggest concern is, what if I get a tenant and they don't want to vacate? They squat. That is my biggest fear. And, you know, there's a lot of people that lost their properties because they really just walked away. They couldn't get the tenants out. And to take control of that and use and say, listen, but I can invest in the property. I can easily get a tenant in there because there's a big demand for occupation, affordable housing. And, you know, affordable housing is such a broad clause. I wanted to say, you know, in the past, affordable housing was maybe in rands less than 5,000 rand. I'm quite sure it's going to go down to 8,000 rand. To see what is more affordable and what is on demand in different areas. We have seen properties that you bought it now and the value has up to doubled in value because the property still grows and areas do differ. Unfortunately, for example, you had people that had lots of property, for example, in Johannesburg CBD, where the value might have gone down, but it's picking up again because there's a new type of approach and there's a big demand. So if you had a property, you might have for a certain period have not shown growth or even suffered a loss, but now you can actually come back from that. So I am still of the opinion, and I see a lot of people to say that property is still a good investment. Naushina, from your side, what is your view?
From my side, I'm 100% with you, Elize. Insofar as Dubai is concerned, for instance, I'm involved in the international property sector here. And as an example, like you said, I'll just capitalize on that. One property owner would not have to outlay capital or payment as such for their property directly from their own pockets. For instance, in the UAE, they have fantastic property purchase options available, whereby you basically put down your 10% deposit, and they've got a payment plan in place, an interest-free payment plan, whereby you could choose. You could either purchase a property and pay it off over a 5 or a 7-year basis, making payment every second month. And in that interim, if you purchase a property that's already ready to be to have a tenant placed in there, you can already start generating rental income, and that rental income can be utilized towards the purchase of your property on the bi-monthly basis as per your payment plan that you agree upon. And in addition, I also wear another hat. I am a partner agent in a multinational company that's based in Dubai, Arton Capital, and we basically offer second citizenship programs in Europe. So insofar as that is concerned as well, we offer properties in Europe in exchange for a European passport, as well as fantastic rental income with great returns. So property will always be your win-win situation. It is an appreciating asset.
Just a question to both of you. I'm going to put a spanner in the works, ladies, both from an international perspective and Elize, from your perspective with regards to South Africa, so totally international. I
can't
on the line who is
a little disturbed.
Yeah,
which
Hawa, we're losing you. You're breaking up a lot. Shall we try that again? Okay, well, Hawa, I think is sorting out her communication. Hawa,
okay.
either or you can. Are you back?
Okay, we can hear you now.
All right, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so just a question, and then I'll try and shut down and come back in. But like Mark says, he's got, for example, property in 3 different continents. Is the normal view that now during COVID that it is a good time to invest in property? I mean, what's your view holistically? Because it's a scary situation to, at this point, give out an investment. What's your view?
Well, from my view, sorry, I just did something on my screen and my screen goes crazy. From my view is it all depends. Not all property that's going to become available is going to be a good buy. I think you still have to do the numbers, and I'm going to touch on that as well. Is if you do the numbers and you have to do your to see whether that property that you're going to buy is definitely going to buy it under market back value, so that you can have future growth. And you have to look at where it's situated to see whether it's still going to give you benefit, whether your yield that you're going to get from the property is going to be enough. So I think it all will still come down to the numbers. So I think there's going to be a lot of properties maybe up for sale, but not all of them are going to be good investments.
And Naushina, would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. It all boils down to the rands and cents, essentially.
Okay, good. Thank you, ladies. I'm going to disconnect and come back in. You can continue, Elize.
Thank you. I always say, Mark said there will be bargains galore coming up. I love that. But little point to buy there are no tenants, which is a big problem in Cape Town. That's true. Okay. So to come back is when you buy your property, this is one of the things that I've often seen is people, when they buy a property and they now a property investor, I see, especially in South Africa, it's a very big thing. It's almost to say I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a property investor now. But they don't deal with their business as if it's a business. So as with any business opportunity, you have to make sure that you put the right things in place when you manage your property. So for the first thing is definitely is to insure your property itself. I mean, when it burns down or, you know, anything to that, a geyser, those type of expenses, that's absolutely the first thing that you have to make sure that is in place, that you don't take in any shortcuts on there to try and save money. The second thing is, I almost want to say it's a more of a preventive action, is to say, take care when vetting new occupants or tenants. Now, vetting is what is meant by there is go and check and do proper research of the person applying to stay in your property. You know, in the old days, even I said when I invested in I got my first tenant in my property, I made the mistake of, I meet the person, they look fantastic, oh, they look so sweet. Yes, let them move in and they become a nightmare. Go look at bank statements. You know, there's nothing wrong with asking bank statements. And also make sure that the bank statements are legal. I mean, to sometimes get falsified documents are very easy. So to make sure that verify that the documents you get is the correct documents. So you're going to have a look. Phone the employers. Make sure, you know, phone a landline. Make sure that the person you're speaking to is indeed the person that's applying's employer, and that that person is indeed working there. I usually love saying that, you know, speak to their landlords, but doesn't help them speaking to the landlord they're staying in now, because I had many people saying, you know, I phoned the landlord and the landlord said, oh, no, they are fantastic tenants. And then when you find them after they moved out and moved in with you, they say, oh, they were terrible, because they just say things to get them rid of them, where you must maybe see if they rented from someone before they moved into the people they're staying in with now, speak to them and get a real story. And this is going to be one of my tips as well, is I think there should be a different approach to how you vet new tenants. And I'll touch on that just now. You know, I have to keep the suspense a bit. But I think also, if you don't want to do this, and there's a lot of pressure on people, sometimes, you know, time, and, you know, you don't have the resources to do all of these checks, get a professional to help you. You know, many people tell me, Liz, I don't want to pay a estate agent to do a procurement for me, you know, just to get me the tenants. But remember, they get paid to do all of those checks. They've got systems available. In South Africa, funny enough, is that somebody could have been evicted and it's not noted on their credit scoring. The reason being is that an eviction is not a monetary judgment. So it's not money that gets that. But I mean, that's why we at Xpello went and said, but we need to know that. So our clients can see whether somebody has been evicted or not. That is information that is should be available. But on the other hand, you have your credit listings, and I've been involved in many occasions that the landlords actually, you know, they go and blacklist them, and then they remove it because they need the people to move out, otherwise they can't find places. So, you know, there's always those questions. So let them, estate agents talk to each other. I love it where somebody says yes, yes, yes. You know, estate agents talk to each other, and they have a way to say, listen, this is a good tenant or not. That is very, very important. The other thing is, now when you have your tenant and you have them in place, there's two things to have a look at. You can investigate your rental insurance. That is quite interesting. And I want to, in the box, everybody that's here, maybe indicate, do you guys know about rental insurance, that it's available, that what is the products out there? Because, you know, with a rental insurance, it's like with any insurances, you have to see if that is something that you'll need. And I know many insurances aren't taking any new applicants, and they usually are very strict, and their services are capped. What is Mark, I agree with you, but when I say rental insurances, I'm talking about your rental guarantees, where they guarantee that they're going to pay your rent if the tenant doesn't pay the rent. But again, look at the terms and conditions, and also they are very strict, high obligations. You know, investigate the prospect against an eviction. And the reason why I separated these two are for the reason that one thing that I've learned is many people focus so much on the rental income. They don't have a look at the bigger picture. Now, the bigger picture is the quicker you get a non-paying tenant out of your property, the quicker you can get a new paying tenant into the property. And in South Africa, you have 3 years to go and claim the outstanding amount that is due to you. So your tenant might not have money now, so it doesn't make sense to go pay an attorney to go get the money back or to claim the money. But over a year from now, maybe who knows, they won the lotto or they get a new business and they have income, and then you can go and recover your money. And what I've seen in the past is with many of the rental guarantees, everybody is so happy to say, listen, I'll get my rent for 3 months, but they don't have a longer picture as how do I get the person out? How do I get them out? And do they cover all of our needs? It is very important to get the tenant out as quickly as possible because you want your property out and to get that cost, because to claim your rental income, your legal cost there is going to be much lower than your eviction cost. Eviction cost can be very, very expensive. Naushina, what is your input from there? That has been an absolute mouthful from my side.
I am in agreement with you, Elize. Just to come in from a South African perspective, particularly in our South African law firm, 9 out of 10 times the landlords elect to evict their tenants on the basis of non-payment of their rentals. And what I always advise all of my landlord clients is that in addition to instituting the eviction application in the High Court, we should simultaneously issue the automatic rent interdict summons. And that would then allow us to go after the tenant for the outstanding arrear rentals and utilities and any other costs that they are outstanding on, by virtue of the civil claim. And what I also do then is we take a listing on, or our clients take a default listing on the tenants, and we leave that in place until such point that the tenants are suffering with all of the credit bureaus of financial institutions, and they actually come back to us in an endeavor to attempt to settle the outstanding amounts. So I agree with you. Due diligence, credit reports, credit ratings, taking the necessary steps and ensuring that you explain to your professional legal advisor or your attorney of record as to what is your desired outcome that you'd like to achieve, or what is the desired result. And from there, the attorney would be able to advise you as to what route you should take.
Yeah, and I think always just to keep in mind, everybody is financially, and ideally if you can do both, that is fantastic. But if you can't do both, always focus on getting your property back and getting an income as quickly as possible.
Because
that is one of the things.
Yes, because you also find yourself in a position where that tenant may vandalize the property. So obtaining your eviction order and executing upon it and having that tenant removed from the property as soon as possible is the best route.
Yes, absolutely.
Hi, Elize. Hi, Naushina. It's Armin here.
Hi,
Hello.
Armin.
How are you? There's a question from Mark. He's asking, what about rental guarantee? Better than insurance?
So from my side, rental insurance is almost like a rental guarantee. I think I just sort of wanted to put it a cap all, because some of the rental guarantees don't just guarantee rental, they go a bit more broader. I think it really depends on what is your needs. I mean, for big property investors that's got lot of properties, to always take out something like that won't make financial sense. Where if you have one property and you are really dependent on that income to pay your bond every month, then it definitely will make sense. So I think it's really to go do your homework, investigate the fine script, the terms and conditions that's usually so small, and see what is the best suited for you. There is various services out there, and to make sure that you know exactly what you get, because for example, despite it was mentioned at force majeure, but there's been a big debate whether this whole COVID actually falls part of that. And I know there's a lot of guarantees at this stage that's not paying out because of all of that. So I think it's always important to get the small print in that.
I hope that answers the question. There's another question from Shanta. She asks, I practiced for a few years many months ago. Estate agents are like undercover investigator. It's so necessary to share information. What is the market like for now for sellers? Re-firing to South Africa, in an elite area, residential or property?
Shanta, I don't know. What I do know is if there's some people that hasn't really been affected that much. So if you have a property in an elite area and there's somebody that can afford it, they will buy it. And they most probably will still negotiate as they will normally negotiate. I think those type of, you have a choice whether you want to sell, and you most probably will get your seller if your price is still reasonable. I do think everybody is waiting to see what the market does, because I mean, if you want to go and buy, I think many people are waiting to see if the prices is not going to come down a bit, that they can save a bit of money. So I don't know if it's ideal to go and sell now, if it's not necessary. That's one of the things that I have in my opinion at this stage.
That's right. Any other question from anyone else? All right, Elize, I think we can continue with the presentation, right?
Thank you, Amal.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I can't believe that we've actually been busy for so long already. Time flies when you're having fun. And then I was dealing, I have the absolute pleasure of not just dealing with a lot of attorneys and estate agents, but also being part of a lot of property educational groups. And one of the things is that I've really learned from investors is you have to go and educate yourself. There's so many programs out there that's very affordable to teach you how to invest in property, how to do the numbers. I laugh and say, that's why I became an attorney, because my accounting absolutely sucks. And that is sucks is a legal word. But make sure that the numbers make sense, that when you buy a property and that it is within your budget, that you budget for everything. There's holding over cost, a possible eviction cost. What if you sell, what if you bought a property, which I call in a flip, you buy, you renovate, and you sell. If you bought this before the COVID, you're going to struggle firstly to finish your maintenance, because all the work had to be stopped. Now something you have holding over cost, or there's a lot of factors that plays in part, and to teach you to do the numbers, and that will absolutely tell you whether you're buying a good deal or not. So really go have a look. If you guys are not sure, please contact me. I'll give you a couple of South African. I also deal with the property coach, which has international investments, and they teach you also how to look at investments in other countries, because you sit in South Africa, people sometimes just have a problem saying, I'm in this province and I want to invest in a different province. And that's already feeling far apart. How does it work to invest in a different country? And that doesn't mean you shouldn't do that. It actually has a lot of potential and a lot of benefit for you to do that. But how do you do that and do it correctly? And also the tax implications. One of the things as well is to get a good network. A network is so important, to be surround yourself with like-minded investors, because that's how you learn. You learn from other people's mistakes. You hear what's the word on the ground. I like what Shanta said, like in the investigators of estate agents. Same with investors. They know where's a good investor, and getting all of that together. And also to build your power team. Now, your power team should be an attorney, should be an accountant, to verify. I say there's certain aspects, yes, that law and accounting do cross, but you have to remember the approach is different. An attorney from my side, being a litigant, usually is we have a look at things to see, if we're going to fight about it, how we can fight about it, or what is within the law boundaries and where not. Where from an accountant side, they look at it differently. So, always to have your power team surrounding you to put you in a position to be able to proceed. That is one of the more important things. And then there's a lot of people saying that, but I want to invest in property, but I don't have X amount of money, or I don't qualify for those type of things to invest in property. There's a lot of property companies that you can invest some money in it, and they go buy the property, and you get a share of a business, of a property. That's also something that you can go and grow and investigate. Always do your homework. I think that's almost the most important thing that I want to say. And then throughout this process, always reassess your portfolio. You know, you have a lot of properties, and you might have a property that is doing extremely well, but maybe 3 years from now, it might not be that good, and it's time to get rid of it and buy something else. So maybe this is one of the times that it really gives you the opportunity to go and reassess your portfolio. Go do the numbers again. See who's still giving you a good yield, who's still going to give you the profit that you want in the long run. Because a property investment is not an overnight thing. You don't buy and sell like shares. You not quickly buy and this and then sell and buy. In property, it's for long term. It's one of your long term investments, and you have to throughout see what is the benefits. Areas change. You get a virus. The bank's approach change. The demand changes. Mark mentioned in Cape Town, you know, they have a problem having tenants. I mean, a lot of people moved away when they experienced that big drought. In other areas, there's so much demand that, you know, people can't keep up. Then you have areas that have so many developments, you know, that has a big impact, and your whole environment changes. So always reassess, see what you have, and also the approach. Remember, the way that you manage somebody that stays in a state differs to one that stays in a block of flats, maybe in the inner city. So type of approach, what is your appetite, and what is the type of tenants you want to deal with, that really, really makes a big difference. So that is definitely my tips for investors, what I've seen and what I've learned as being part of the investors, and, you know, also investing into property. That really, really makes a big difference in my life. Naushina, from your side, anything that you want to add?
I'm 100% in agreement with you. It's so important for a potential property purchaser to investigate and see exactly what they want, the type of tenants they want to attract, the types of returns on the investments they'd like to attract, what type of investment they'd like to put in, and what their monthly exposure would be in respect of that investment. Even from an international perspective, we've got properties, for instance, in Dubai ranging from 500,000 dirhams right up until any amount that you could come up with right now. And the same with Europe. We've got properties ranging from 2.8 million euros up until an infinity amount. So that's just depending on the availability, depending on the affordability, and what desired outcome they're looking to achieve again.
Absolutely. So I think coming to the end of this thing is, I saw at a couple of the quotes, and this is some of the quotes I got, and it was quite true that 90% of all millionaires do own real estate somewhere. That might not have been the whole cause of becoming a millionaire, but they definitely invest in real estate, so there should be some value from that. And owning a home or a property, you know, we even going into an era where many people are buying a property, they're leasing that out, and they're renting somewhere else, which is happening. But that type of security, I think, especially in these times, having a property, having something that you can see, I don't want to say see and touch and feel, and you can physically have, does give a bit of a more emotional security. If there's any questions, please, I think this is the opportunity that we can discuss, address any of the questions.
Any other question from audience right now? Yes, Miss Hawa, she has a question. That's the real Hawa, not me, Hawa. Yes, Miss Hawa, what question do you have?
Hi, everyone. I just want to confirm, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. No, I don't have a question. I believe there's a hand showing from Namila.
No, now we can't hear you.
And Namila, I'm not sure, do you have a question? If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Armand, yeah, he has a question, I guess. Okay, you can write, or you can unmute yourself and speak with Elize or Naushina.
I see it says Namila had her hand up.
Yeah. Is there a question from Namile? I don't know.
Yes,
Is Namile muted? Can she hear us?
I think no, I don't have any question. No. Okay,
No.
I don't think
No,
there's any other
that's
question from the audience right now. All right.
Okay.
Although Hawa says Namile has a question.
No, that was Namile. It's by mistake, I guess, because she is listening to us.
Okay.
All right. Lucy, any other question? Any other thing?
Well, I think the good news is that all of this information will be available, and it's been recorded. Arnold's got his finger on everything as usual. And if there's anything that comes, anybody can contact us, and we will address any of the questions. I want to say thank you. An hour and a half out of a day that these days can be very busy. Thank you very much for the time. To share this information and just to to touch base with people from all over the world with property, because everybody is feeling it in some sort of way. And to know that everybody is got a process and sharing the expertise and just input, and know that as a property investor there's other people's knowing how we feel makes it feel absolutely great. So definitely thank you for Orbrix and Hawa and Amal, everybody, for arranging all of this. And thank you to all the attendees that attended this morning, and looking forward to connect to everyone.
Thank you, Elize. Thank you, Naushina, for all the insight you shared from Internet Market. Thank you, everyone, for attending the session, and also thanks from Hawa directly, because she is not suffering from her laptop is not suffering. Actually, her internet is the main issue. That's why we can't hear her. So no problem. Once again, thank you, everyone, for joining us in this informative session, and especially Elize and Naushina to share all the insight from international market regarding properties and all this stuff. Thank you. Welcome, Mohsin.
Thank
We'll
you. Amal, should I hang up?
I'm sorry?
Do I just stop? Stop the session, or do I hand it back to you, or what should I do? I've got a lot of extra buttons that I usually do.
That's fine. That's the last slide. You can keep it till the end. So we are actually closing up. So thank you, Zenga, for Daniel, and also join our next session. So you can have all the information on our Facebook page, and also join, and I will be sending you personalized email or WhatsApp messages. So if you want, you can join our next panel talk. Also, there are a few free sessions also to join. All the links you can find on our Facebook page. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye. See you next in the next session.